People have always fought with each other for resources that allowed and allow them to survive and improve their quality of life. Money is a very valuable resource for most modern people, which is of great importance for those who are below a certain level of social hierarchy and can afford something only thanks to money. And below this level are most of the people on planet Earth. Therefore, people constantly fight with each other for money, like dogs for a bone thrown to them, because only with the help of money can they get what they need and want. However, not everyone is taught to fight for money, and not only for money, but in general for everything we need in this life. Moreover, many of us are weaned from fighting at all, but instead are taught to obey, thus making prey out of us, and not predators. Therefore, in order to fight for resources, for money and in general for a place in the sun, for the sake of not only a decent life, but also for the sake of interest, you need to learn this, as they say, from scratch. Let's see how this can be done, how to learn to fight for money. First of all, get out of your head all the thoughts that money is distributed fairly among people, that there is honest money and dishonest money, that some people deserve to have a lot of money, while others do not, and similar dregs. My website will help you with this. Remember once and for all that there is no justice. Those who receive the most money are those who are cunning, strong, smart, resourceful, and so on. That is, there is only one justice. This is natural justice, when the strongest and fittest survive and win, and the rest lose and die. But social justice does not exist, there is only its illusion. Therefore, you can spend all day in hard work, and still remain a beggar, because you are not fighting for money, you are selling for it. In our time, struggle implies, first of all, a game of mind, the purpose of which is to subjugate people as a source of money, or rather, as a source of those goods that can be bought with money, and as a resource that can be bought with money. Learn to influence people. Learn to extract money in decent quantities. Therefore, for example, liberal arts education is the basis for success in this world for those who want to manage people, and not produce something useful for society. The world was ruled, is ruled and will continue to be ruled by humanists. Remember this. Although what is there to remember, it's already visible. It's not for nothing that there is an opinion that engineers, builders, peasants and other hard workers create benefits, and lawyers and economists divide them, distribute them among people, not forgetting about themselves first of all. Is this unfair? Without a doubt. But that's how life works. And those who disagree with this, do not listen. Naturally, humanities education can go well with technical education, but at the same time it must be of high quality. And with this we have problems in our country, which are related to the fact that the authorities do not need critically thinking people, they need, at best, artisans. Technicians are artisans who create goods, and cunning humanists share these goods. Technicians work with natural resources, and humanists work with human resources. Do you need to explain the difference in both jobs? I'm sure not. Technicians and humanists. These are all conditional definitions, because when talking about humanists, I'm talking about those who understand people and know how to manage them, know how to influence them. And this skill can be learned by anyone with any education and even without it. In general, the essence of my message is that someone who knows how to work with human material has a much better chance of becoming rich and successful in many things than someone who does not know how to do so. After all, even successful money management depends to a much greater extent on a person's ability to manage people with its help, and not on his ability to work with numbers. However, all people fight for money, regardless of their knowledge and mentality. And the winners in this fight are mainly those who set the rules of the game for others and monitor their implementation. A real struggle. This is not competition, not playing by other people's rules, as businessmen crawling around in our country today do with cancer, forced to play by the rules of power, which are constantly changing. This is setting their own rules. You won't make much money if you try to do this within the opportunities that your employer or the state has provided you, or some local godfather who sets the rules of the game in his clearing. Playing by these rules won't win much. No, of course, you will earn some money, depending on what game you play and how successfully you do it. You can create a relatively honest business and have something from it, giving it all your time. But this is not a struggle. All this competition between businesses, competition between employees of some enterprise with each other, competition between some companies. This is not a struggle. It's more of a survival. Wrestling is what allows you to look beyond the possibilities that other people have defined for you, other bipedal creatures, of the same flesh and blood as you, but whom you, for some reason, consider superior to yourself, agreeing to play their game according to their rules. A wrestler is a person who stands in his mind above the system, and does not think within its framework. That is why some scammers manage to create financial pyramids and fool millions of people, while others complain that they, poor and unfortunate businessmen, are oppressed, stifled by taxes, and are not allowed to work at all. I'm not talking about the need to be dishonest and deceive everyone by engaging in all sorts of fraud. I'm not talking about the need to look for an opportunity to circumvent any rules, as, for example, oligarchs do, and not play by them. You don't have to wait for you to be given more opportunities. You need to create them by getting closer to those people who create the rules of the game. Guys, remember, in this life, no one gives anything to anyone except loyally. In it they only take everything away from those who cannot defend theirs. Learn to think more broadly. Learn to overcome the boundaries that smarter people have outlined for you. Only then can you achieve something significant in life. Therefore, smart businessmen go into politics or get closer to the authorities, which in our country sets the rules of the game for everyone, and do not think about how to come to an agreement with them. Sheep don't negotiate with wolves. So money and power are always closely connected with each other. The only question is in which country money controls power and in which power controls money. In ours, it is the government that manages money. How to become someone who can fight for money? You need to lose all interest in money. I understand that it sounds strange, not the way they write about it in business bestsellers, where they encourage you to love money and be aimed at it. Well, bestsellers have become bestsellers because they are bought. That's why they are written so that they are bought, and those who cannot and do not want to fight for anything at all, including money, buy them. People prefer to read books about how to become rich and successful, rather than acting the way the rich and successful act, by studying not what they write about, but what they do. You need to think with your head in order to achieve something, or receive a quality education, which is simply inaccessible to most poor people. Therefore, I repeat, money needs to be used to hammer in a large and thick bolt. Because the love of money often makes a person corrupt. But corrupt people cannot think strategically. They want to get everything at once. They cannot resist temptations. They cannot and do not want to give up money for more advantageous positions, in which this money is actually more. In the end, they do not want to sacrifice their well-being for the sake of great goals, upon achievement of which money itself will come into their lives. Money was generally created for slaves. This is a tool for managing them. And when we talk about an instrument, we should not see it as anything more than just an instrument. You don't dream of having a wrench to unscrew the nut, because what the hell, dreaming about a tool, it's just a thing. You may need it, but you won't dream about it unless you're an idiot. You need to achieve your goal, unscrew the nut, but you don't need the key itself. So, money is also a thing. It is an intermediary between you and what you really need. To use it, You need to learn to hold it in your hands, and to acquire it. You need to be able to take it away from other people, either by force or by cunning. The latter, as life shows, works more efficiently. How will you do this? How will you take away, not even the money itself, but the opportunities with which you can take money from other people? Or, if you want, confiscate them without resorting to violence? You won't do this by force. Strength has limited capabilities. Besides, against whom should it be used? Against ordinary people, taking away their last crumbs, or against those who rob these ordinary people today? If against ordinary people, then you are unlikely to achieve anything with this today. People do not like to be used against them by force. They either resist this force, or, if it is used to suppress and intimidate them, turn into degraded, stupid cattle that have very low labor productivity. This was the case in the USSR, I mean low labor productivity, in which, due to the suppression of the individual and an unviable economy based on coercion, most people lost interest in work and even life, which is why men drank themselves to death, since they did not feel like men. Today in Russia, labor productivity, as is known, is also low, 4 times lower than in the United States. I remember the only thing people began to strive for, especially in the last years of the life of the great country, was simply to survive. Violence does not lead to good things. It once destroyed the scoop, and it does not allow our country to develop today. And today this is happening. After all, if you take a closer look at the lives of most people, then apart from grueling work and stupid cheap entertainment, there is nothing in it. Just look at how people make money under widespread restrictions. Are they creating something new? Are they innovating everywhere? Do they invest heavily in their own development? No. For violence, suppression, restrictions, restrain all these possibilities. This is not life. This is survival. To maintain oneself in a viable state in order to work, and to work in order to maintain oneself in a viable state. Was man created for this? I think that for this purpose a donkey, a Murin, was created, but not a person, with his gray substance in his head. So the ossified population cannot and does not want, or, on the contrary, at first they do not want, and then they can no longer work effectively, and most importantly, create. And without this, life becomes ineffective, of poor quality and uninteresting. Life is not life when a person does not have the opportunity to express himself, when he is only forced to work for the system, and not for himself. And to work in all these fucking factories, where they yell at you all day long, where they humiliate you, suppress you, smack you, where they don't consider you a person, you can only kill yourself. This, gentlemen and ladies, is my personal opinion. Whoever disagrees with him is your business. Criticize, argue, be nostalgic for some better times. I don't mind. I don't insist on anything. I'm honest with you and I say what I think. And the Soviet Union, friends, unfortunately or fortunately, who knows, turned into a scoop when there were so many lies in it, and so little food, that no one needed it anymore. Therefore, globalists decided to break it down into several separate clearings, making sure, during the experiment, that the carrot is still a better incentive for the person being exploited than the stick. That is why today people are motivated to work by loans, and not by force, threats, intimidation, coercion. And people have adopted these new rules, and as can be seen from their behavior, they like them. Do you think why people take out loans? Why don't they live within their means? And everything is very simple. They are hungry for everything, for all this junk that they have not seen before, to which they are not yet accustomed. They want to get enough, get drunk from their belly. In the West there is no longer such a craving for consumption. People there are at a new stage of worldview. And just recently we stood in giant queues for food, fighting not for money, but for food, for life. And then the food ran out, and the question arose about the struggle exclusively for life. For when the harvest ends, people, you know, have no time for patriotism, no time for great ideas. Any army can be destroyed to hell if it is not fed, say, a month or two, and this is still a long time. So slavery in the 21st century does not work, in a primitive form, of course. And if you, wanting to fight for money, use force against those who exploit people, who cut and cut them, then there is a high probability that you yourself will be killed. Who would want to give you their clearing? It is inappropriate to use force against slave overseers. They simply need to be forced out of their homes, enlisting the support of slaves and those who manage the system. This is not a fight for money, this is a fight for positions. But by using force against those within the system who look after and exploit slaves, you are making these taskmasters' exploiters more united and therefore stronger. It is much more profitable to pit them against each other so that they kill each other for an extra asset, and then the owners of the system will need other managers. And you can become one of these managers, having received a certain power in your own hands, and therefore the opportunity to earn good money. This is a real struggle, or better yet, a game. Well, if you think about using force against the system, then you will all the more fail, because the system today is global, almost complete, in which everything has long been divided and configured, and each of its elements does exactly the work that it should do. So where do you find the power you need against the system, on Mars or what? Previously, it was still possible to attract foreign resources to fight against the system of which you were a part, and which suppressed, exploited, terrorized you, but today there is no such possibility. Or rather, it is much more difficult to use. So abroad most likely will not help you if the system in which you live suits the owners of the world. But you need to understand that today a person and money are resources for which a struggle has unfolded between individual elements of the system, and you can take advantage of this situation by making yourself a person that many will need. Then you will find the most advantageous place for you in the global system. So you don't have to pit small systems against each other to fight them with their own hands, as all sorts of revolutionaries have done and are trying to do today. You can force systems to compete for you within the global system. The system has become unified and integral, so you need to be able to find your place in it in order to fight for a better life according to the rules that are most favorable to you. And if it works out, then you can impose your own rules so that everyone dances to some patriotic tune, doing what you want. It's not for nothing that people are involved in politics. They understand what it can lead them to, what it can give them. So I understand the goals of the globalists. These goals are quite reasonable. It is not so important for them which queen will sit in one part of the world or another and control her monkeys. It is important for them to maintain order and stability throughout the world, throughout the entire system. Otherwise the system will collapse. And the kings themselves, naturally, think mainly about self-preservation, so they pit their monkeys against each other or against foreign monkeys in order to thus direct their aggression towards each other, diverting it from themselves. You cannot trust them under any circumstances when they talk about the enemies of their system in order to rally the people around a supposedly common enemy. Otherwise, you will not fight for a better life, but for who knows what. After all, how many fools die in absolutely meaningless wars, in which they personally have nothing to fight for at all? You can't believe in all these fairy tales, friend or foe, you can't. People should be judged by deeds, and not by their words. Otherwise, they draw enemies for you and me out of the blue, and they themselves keep all their assets with these enemies. They have some conversations behind the scenes, but they tell us something else. The Gospel of Matthew says, For where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Matt. 6:21. Where are the treasures of your power? Where do our leaders keep their money? Where do their children study and live? This is where their heart is. So you shouldn't confuse your interests with the interests of those who care about you absolutely nothing. Otherwise they tell you and me, go to serve in the army to defend your homeland. From whom should we protect her? It doesn't matter from whom. We will find or come up with enemies or deeds for you. Moreover, we like to organize wars from time to time in order, firstly, to reduce the number of genetically promising human individuals. Secondly, for business. We need to produce weapons for something. And thirdly, for fun. You play wars on the computer, and system managers play real wars, with your bodies. And this is how things are with each country, mainly the third world, with, so to speak, a red zone and partly yellow zones. And the first world, the green zone, also lives partly like this. In general, in developed countries, the authorities, as you can see for yourself, only pretend to be independent of global managers, but in reality, do everything they tell them. It doesn't matter who runs everything there. I'm not retelling the spirit of the times to you. I urge you to simply open your eyes and see what's really happening in the world. This will help you understand which rules and which game you are best to play in order to fight for money in the most profitable way for you. Today there are no sovereign countries that would pursue their own policies, and even in the interests of their own people. There are territories, systems, or even subsystems in which the protégés of the world elite exploit the human material under their control. Somewhere people are exploited better, somewhere worse. Just like cattle, depending on the conditions and necessity, as well as the usefulness of these cattle. An intelligent, educated person will not play around on slave terms, but an illiterate savage will have nowhere to go. But in reality there is no confrontation between all sorts of Americans, Russians, Chinese and other glades. What the hell is a confrontation when up to $1 trillion are transferred from China annually to the West? What are you talking about? There, in the West, and their children study, all these Chinese leaders, just like the children of our politicians and big businessmen. We live in a global world, in a global system that cannot be destroyed by pitting its individual parts against each other. You cannot pit China against America and get something out of it, because they are one. And even an economic crisis always affects not so much the country as a whole, but certain segments of the population in these countries. You see how all these kings impose tribute on their own people in order to maintain their high standard of living when problems arise in the economy because of them. So the only thing left for you and me, to exploit human material, trained to lick our master, is to competently integrate into this system in order to become part of it. This is the meaning of the struggle for money today. This is a struggle for power, not over the system, but over human resources controlled by the system. Simply put, this is a struggle for the manager's chair, for the chair that looks after the slaves and controls them. The rulers of the world themselves use such an instrument of submission for this purpose people as involvement, in fact, thus finding use for talented managers who do not want to put up with a low quality of life in the role of ordinary hard workers. And managing, even a small number of people, and in some cases a herd of sheep, is better than trying to organize a crusade against those in whose hands today all the resources of planet Earth are. So the world elite involves smart rebels in their game, since manipulation has no effect on them, and destroys stupid rebels. So, wanting to fight for money, for real money, and not for some pennies, or rather even for providing you with money, that is, for a certain power, think about what you can offer to the world elite in order to be useful to them, and what you can interest the crowd so that they want to make you their leader. Your strength, expressed in cruel treatment of people, I'll say right away, no one really needs it. Saddam Hussein used force, ended up on the gallows, so take into account the mistakes of other managers. But if you use the power of authority to interest the crowd, and not scare it, then you have a chance to interest the world elite. What does it mean to be an authoritative person? This means that people will want to give you power over themselves, and with it they will want to give you their money. They will want to obey you because they will respect you and believe you. So when people fight for money, they fight for power based on authority, not force. Although, the latter, of course, is also in demand in some places. So real leaders are fighting for what will allow them to manage money, to manage people with money, not for the money itself. And power is subordination, which, as we have already found out, can be built on strength or authority. And the authority itself, which allows one to gain power, must be based on a skillful projection of the future. You must offer people a dream, and in return receive their submission, support and fanatical service to you. We read Machiavelli and Hitler, it's all there. When a person promises people something very good, painting a beautiful picture in their imagination, like New Vespucci, he tries to take over the minds of these people and gain power over them. Let's say I told you what to do, and you did it, which means I gained power over you, albeit for a short period of time, but I did. You can obey me out of fear if I intimidate you, or out of respect for me and recognition of my authority, and because of the benefit you will receive if you obey me. If I obeyed you, then it was you who gained power over me. It's simple, there is subordination. There is power, there is no subordination. There is no power either. There is nothing bad about this. We all have a certain power over each other, because we obey each other in certain situations. Let's say I will obey the specialist I need and trust to make myself better, so as not to waste extra time and money on figuring everything out myself. Conversely, another person, submit to me as a specialist if he needs my help. However, when we talk about money, we need to understand that here power takes on special forms. It uses its authority to use legitimate violence against those it controls for the purpose of obtaining benefits. So you still can't do without the use of force, but it must be legitimate, that is, the people must support it. First, come up with the image of an enemy, and then bring everyone who is bothering you and whom you want to get rid of under it. This is how today, the whole world is fighting terrorism, and at the same time anyone can become a terrorist, including a completely respectable citizen who has become disliked by someone. Moreover, no one says that terrorism is actively sponsored by those who fight against it, and in some cases is a reaction to terror on the part of the authorities. In general, people fight for power for a reason. They fight for it in order to then be able to resolve any issues by force in their favor. Forget about justice, therefore, if you still trust in it. No justice exists except that which a strong man will devise for you. The reason that the authorities are attracted is that they allow a person to set his own rules, his own laws, his own justice, for everyone else. And investing money in it when you either bribe power or buy it for yourself is one of the best investments. Power, the most powerful drug. She makes us very strong in her own eyes. I will make you an outlaw and take everything from you, money, property, everything. If I want, I'll put you in a warm place where you will be useful to me. That's it. And most importantly, the authorities allow them to subjugate resources, human, monetary, informational and others. When a person gains power, through strength and authority, he begins to increase his resources, taking them under his control, thereby strengthening his power. Therefore, everything that contributes to his power, he develops, and everything that weakens it and that poses a threat to it, suppresses, destroys, changes. That's why takeovers, mergers, annexations and things like that happen. That is why history is being rewritten. Media that have never been independent and never will be taken under control. That is why laws are invented that allow some to do everything, while others are prohibited from even breathing. For the same reason, all kinds of regalia of power are invented, which give it weight, significance, and authority. Just keep in mind that today you can appropriate resources for yourself only with the permission of the world elite. No arbitrariness, otherwise you will be punished. We see this in those situations when all sorts of sanctions are imposed or someone bombs someone. Well, money is already a reward for a person for the power that he has gained. It is a consequence of his capabilities, which he expanded with the help of power. Therefore, smart people don't really fight for money. They fight for a position in society that allows them to have money, a lot of money. You and I know stories when a person had a lot of money, but he ended badly, because, having obtained a lot of money, he did not obtain the position in society that allows him to have and protect it. You built a financial pyramid, for example. You lured a lot of suckers into it. They robbed them. Here's money. A lot of money. And then brothers visited you, let's say, brothers from the state, and took everything away. And they put you in prison too. And what? Where is your money? What did they give you? Yes, you can try to buy someone with this money, lawyers, bandits, cops, government officials, judges, and so on. But a person can also be deprived of this opportunity, at the expense of the resources already available to other people. What do I need your lawyers, if I stand above the law? Do you read the news? Do you see what is happening? Do you see what the untouchable caste, which has lost its fear and has never had conscience, allows itself? Well, what kind of laws can we talk about then? Why the hell are lawyers needed then? Today, even money doesn't solve everything, let alone the law. It's just that no amount of money will give power to a person, because for power, whatever one may say, a certain authority is needed. A well-coordinated hierarchical system is needed in which money will be distributed according to certain laws, so that people fulfill their obligations for money, and not just appropriate them for themselves. Money can only become power in a stable, developed and developing system, and not in a society of savages. You can pay an official to bribe him with a lot of money, but he will not necessarily do what you need, or even be able to take all your money from you, with the help of administrative resources. In the same way, a state, for example, can prohibit the circulation of foreign currency on its territory by issuing a special law. And everyone who is still rich today, thanks to foreign currency, can become criminals tomorrow. So money is not as omnipotent as is commonly believed. So smart people fight not so much for money, but, I repeat, for the power that allows them to have and manage this money. It is only poor people who think about how to get rid of lack of money with the help of money, and not with the help of some of their qualities that they need to develop in themselves in order to gain more opportunities. Besides, what is considered money? The world currency, which is controlled by the world elite, or all these candy wrappers, the purchasing power of which is constantly declining. Say the Zimbabwean dollar, is money? What about the Russian ruble? Power. These are people who obey you, because without people, even if you are king 3 times, you will not have power. Therefore, the struggle for money is a struggle for power, and the struggle for power is a struggle for the minds of people, with the help of all available methods. It is clear that someone who already has power has more access to people's minds and the ability to influence them, but this does not mean at all that being below, at the parachute, you do not have the opportunity to climb several floors higher along the social elevator with the help of laws nature. And according to the laws of nature, every person has strengths and weaknesses, using which you can outplay other people and rise above them. You can go upstairs without an elevator, with the help of the same revolution. But this will be a riskier game, a more dangerous game. And you can only win it if you are supported by the world elite, which, according to my observations, is not particularly interested in such things. And then, it seems to me, it is much easier to learn business than the ability to overthrow the government in a non-democratic way. Yes, revolutions occur and local wars are waged, but at the same time, they are controlled by the world elite, because they involve resources under their control. Do you really think that, for example, some kind of terrorist organization in the Middle East could have existed, and even waged war, for, say, a couple of months, if resources had not been pumped into it from the outside? Who sells them weapons? Who supplies them with medicines and other things they need to live? Interested forces from the outside world, who else? Nevertheless, I think no one really needs revolutions. They are too unproductive. There is a lot of blood, and the benefits are not obvious, even for those who organize these revolutions. Although sometimes they still happen. This happens when other ways to change the stupid government in a particular country do not work. But it's better not to engage in these games. It's better to act using more civilized methods, fighting for power, so as not to destroy the existing order of things in society and not to turn the world elite against itself, which, although it allows some revolutions to occur, still, as I see, prefers less noisy ways of solving their problems. All this noise with shooting, blood, it is of course necessary to keep the sheep in the stall, but it is not necessary. Sheep also need to be protected. It's better that they die from alcohol, medicine and drugs, generating income than from bullets. These global players, practical guys, they are looking for benefit in everything and will not destroy people in large numbers just like that, out of conviction or emotions, as Hitler did. Let's think about what the average person can do to hang out at least a little with strong people who, since childhood, were taught to crush their neighbor for a place, not even under the sun, but above it. Stop thinking standard. That's what. You need to abandon the herd mental.